Have you ever thought, is this just me when struggling to stay organized, start tasks, or manage time? For those of us over 50, these challenges might not be just aging. They could be ADHD hiding in plain sight for decades. I'm Jami Shapiro, host of Grandma Has ADHD, and I'm building a community where your experiences matter. Whether you're diagnosed, questioning, or simply curious, you're not alone. Our Facebook group is filled with vibrant, understanding people over 50 who share their stories, strategies, and yes, even their struggles, with plenty of laughter along the way. Ready to find your people? Join our growing Grandma Has ADHD Facebook community. Please like and subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen and share it with someone who might need to hear they're not alone, because ADHD doesn't have an age limit and neither does understanding yourself better. Together, we're changing the conversation about ADHD after 50. Come be part of the story. Hey, here's a quick heads up before we dive in. You may hear me mention the Sparkler Society in this episode. Talking about it's happening right now. And here's the truth. My ADHD brain got so excited about this community that I may have jumped a little bit enthusiastically, a lot enthusiastically, before everything was actually ready. Classic ADHD move, right? We know what that's like. So here's what's actually happening. We've hit pause to make sure the Sparkler Society launches the right way, because this is going to change lives, and I want it to be everything you deserve from day one. We're officially launching in July of 2026, and here's what you can look forward to. Live group sessions every week, including support around decluttering and downsizing, body doubling, and ADHD group coaching. We are also addressing some of the big challenges of ADHD, worrying, overspending, and starting crafts only to lose steam. Membership in the Sparkler Society is going to save you from paying the ADHD tax. We're talking real dollars back in your pocket. And most importantly, we are building a community of women who want to get their shit together. Here's the exciting part. We're starting a wait list right now at jamishapiro.me. That's JAMISHAPIRO.me. And the VIPs who join early will get free access to shape the community before we officially launch in July. You'll help us build this thing together. So if you hear me talking about the Sparkler Society, it's happening tomorrow, just know it's coming in July, and it's going to be worth the wait. Let's get to today's episode. Hi, I'm Jami Shapiro, and welcome to Grandma Has ADHD. I'm a certified senior move manager and owner of Silver Linings Transitions, where I help people navigate life's big transitions. But here's the thing. I spent years helping families move through change while completely missing the pattern that was running through my own life. I'm the daughter of 2 ADHD parents, the mother of 3 ADHD children, and yep, I have ADHD too. For years, I didn't have the language or understanding for what that meant. But becoming an ADHD coach and specialist, that's been absolutely game-changing. Not just for how I work with my clients, but for how I relate to my family, and honestly, for how I understand myself. I even wrote a book about it called This Explains So Much. This podcast is for all of us who are discovering ADHD later in life. Each week, I bring you conversations with industry experts and people sharing their own ADHD journeys, real stories, real strategies, and often a little too much information. If you're loving what you're hearing, please share this podcast, leave us a review, and find me at jamishapiro.me. That's JAMISHAPIRO.me. Whether you're over 50 and just getting diagnosed, or you're recognizing patterns you've lived with your whole life, this is your space to navigate ADHD with others who get it. So grab your coffee and get comfortable, and let's dive in.
Just a little differently.
We're welcoming a coach who spent over 25 years helping high-performing adults thrive in our overscheduled, overstimulated world. Our guest is a PCC certified coach with specialized training in ADHD and executive function, Clifton's strengths, emotional intelligence, and even retirement transitions. Because let's face it, navigating life after 50 needs its own toolkit. Here's what makes her approach so refreshing. She doesn't believe in fixing what's broken. Instead, she works with clients across the lifespan, whether they have ADHD or are just drowning in too many demands and priorities, to leverage their strengths from productivity optimization to managing work-life balance to tackling personal challenges. She helps people build lives that actually bring them joy, not just check off boxes. If you're tired of feeling like you're constantly behind and ready to discover what you're naturally great at, this conversation is for you. Please welcome to the Grandma Has ADHD podcast, Jennifer Lorenz. Woo! Hi, welcome.
Hi, Jami. Welcome. Thank you. I'm really excited to be here. Thanks.
I love having you. And as I share in my podcasts, I don't do a lot of pre-interviews. I just want to get the pronunciation of the name. So I don't really know much more about you other than your bio, which is quite impressive. So I cannot wait to dive into this because this is probably one of those subjects that I will benefit from.
Happy to, yeah. So as it says in there, I've been a working professional in the working world for only 10 or 5 minutes, about 25 years. And through that time, I've mentored a lot of people. And just in the last few years, having gotten my coaching certification and then specifically working on ADHD coaching, I just see additional challenges that those of us with ADHD have in the working world. Just trying to deal with the structure and all of the things that we have to deal with. So just to kind of give you a rough background, in addition to my corporate world experience, I am a certified coach. So I got my basic coach training, I like to call it, at IPEC, the Institute for Professional Excellence in Coaching. I got that as my baseline certification. And then I also obtained my certification as a Gallup Clifton Strengths coach, which is a huge component of the way that I approach coaching. One of the reasons that I loved Gallup and Clifton Strengths so much is that it's a positive base. So they look at the world saying, you have all of these strengths, let's focus on that and minimize and get help with and do the other things we need to do for those things that we're just not as strong in. And it's really about doubling down on those things that you're really naturally good at. So that is a huge component of the way that I coach, generally speaking, and just my general approach to life. And then in addition to that, I also have my certification in the emotional intelligence assessment. And then the big one that's most relevant for us today is I spent a year at ADCA, like you, the ADD Coach Academy, doing the basic training, and then also going on to spend 7 months in their families certification. So that was some intensive training on executive function and helping kids, in particular kids and families and parents, and all of the extra challenges that come with being a parent of ADHD kids, being an ADHD kid, working and living in this society, in this highly structured, very, what I might call a rigid area. In school, they have the rigid rules of you must do this at this time, and that can be challenging for ADHD kids. So that's where I come from, and that's my training and my background.
Wow. Okay. So I want to hear your personal story before we get into,
Sure.
I like the fun part. I like the stories. I want to understand and get to know you.
Yeah, thanks. So yeah, my story is a late diagnosed adult, actually. And what I have seen happen many times with the families that I work with is a very common family situation where a child in the family gets diagnosed. And in that case, I have two sons. My oldest is now 17. My youngest is 14. And my oldest, I suspected, had ADHD. And at the time, I knew nothing about it other than like this thing, ADHD exists, and that's about all I knew. And so when my son was diagnosed just after second grade, then I started to try to learn everything I could learn. Now, he is a combined type. So he has all four of us in our family here's the spoiler alert, all four of us ended up being diagnosed. And he is combined type, but he presents kind of as that typical hyperactive little boy, which made it easier to spot. And so I did all this research and learned everything I could learn about that type of presentation for ADHD. And then my second son comes along and has a totally different presentation.
Mm-hmm.
And it was only it was picked up because of our pediatrician, who was amazing,
Mm-hmm.
and mentioned, she said, "Oh, he sounds so much like my younger son." And I was thinking, wait, what, really? And I was like, well, how do you think he would have ADHD? It's not what it looks like at all. And so she educated me, thankfully. And then we ended up going ahead and getting him tested. And it turns out he is also combined type, but he presents as that inattentive type. And as I was learning all of the things about what that looks like, I started to see, that looks a little familiar, a little pot calling the kettle black on that one. And so then I pursued my own diagnosis, and I too have combined type and present as inattentive. So that's kind of the journey and how I got more and more educated. And then what we found with my older son in particular, we had a lot of challenges with the school system. He was in an elementary school that just really, I heard things like ADHD is in your mind. It's all made up. It's not a thing. You're making excuses, all of that. Just for years, we heard that. So it was necessary for us as advocates to become as educated as we could. And that's how I started on the journey. I ended up also having a great experience, totally separate from that, a great experience with a coach. I was like, wow, this coaching thing is really great. And so I pursued that. And in the process of pursuing that, I found out, they can have ADHD coaches. And I thought, well, that's just the perfect fit. And so that's how I got here, and why in particular families was really important to me, because I really wanted to, I'm kind of that geeky nerd researcher who really likes to understand the science behind everything. So that's why I go after the executive function, and my bookshelves might be a little overflowing.
We do tend to have that area that is of the most interest to us. So tell me a little bit, by the way, I am also combined type, and I have a funny story. So I also was diagnosed alongside of my oldest child, who's now 24. And when they insisted on being evaluated, I was like, you don't have ADHD. You've been reading since you were 3, because my half brother was hyperactive and had to be on Ritalin. And that was the ADHD story. And then, so of course I'm answering the questions with the psychiatrist, and I'm like, I'm answering more yeses for me. So my child is inattentive. I'm hyperactive. I have a mom that's inattentive. That's how I got into all of this, because when I realized that she lived 77 years and no one had caught it, then we needed to really address that. But my father is hyperactive. So I have both parents as well. But my 17-year-old, I was in the middle of ADCA coach training when my child's therapist evaluated her for ADHD, and she was 16, and I thought she had it when she was younger, and then she sort of just like performing really well, and she definitely wasn't the way that my oldest child was, and so I didn't really pay attention, and then so I'm in the middle of ADCA coach training, and my child is diagnosed.
Yeah,
so right. It looks so different, and that's one of the reasons that I wanted to do this podcast, is that it doesn't look the same. It doesn't affect us all in the same way, but executive functioning, which I would love for you to share what that is, because so many people don't understand what it is, such a big word, and that shapes our ADHD experience. But I also want you to give us the story. So go ahead and tell me a little bit about little Jennifer.
Oh, wow. So little Jennifer, she was that very people-pleasing, good girl, total opposite of what you would expect, when you hear that very stereotypical hyperactive little boy story, which is only what ADHD can look like, as we were often all taught. I was the total opposite of that. Very studious, total nerd from the beginning. I started reading in first grade, and once I learned how to read, I have never put the books down. I will read just about anything and everything, and read all the time. And so I got good grades and did all those things. I really struggled in math. And like chemistry was a real challenge for me when I got into high school. But I really struggled in math. And now I see, looking back, why I struggled so much. And you get this, one of the things that motivates me so much to work particularly with ADHDers is we get these negative comments, and these just, even when people think they're not being negative, they're just, they sort of slide in there, and they're just devastating to our self-confidence. And I worked so hard in math, and it was never one of those things that came easy to me. And I just struggled. And when I got into college and I was working full time and going to school full time, I mean, looking back, I really wish I would have known, because there's so many things that I work with my clients now, and all of the strategies and the ways that we approach things that can be absolute life changers for them. And that's really what lights me up. So, I guess in some ways that's every little bit is like healing that little Jennifer in me that really could have used those strategies. I became hyper organized, and to this day, I absolutely love planners, and, absolutely go crazy on the planning and being very strategic and stuff. And it really works for me. And I think that was an outcropping of me just having to adjust and just having to deal with that executive function challenges that I struggled with, and had to find a way to function in college and in the working world. Mm-hmm. And now looking back, all of it just makes so much more sense.
Right. That was something that I didn't learn early in my ADHD story, was the perfectionism, and how that is creating those systems for someone, because they recognize that they can't rely on their short-term memory or, some of their executive functioning. So, someone who works as an analyst and does pattern recognition, how does that play into understanding ADHD in seniors?
I think it works across the board, whether it's seniors or little kids and everyone in between. And that's, I think, one of the powers of coaching is when you have somebody who is educated and trained to look for certain things and look for certain patterns. And then I combine that with the professional training of being able to spot those, patterns across the board. You really can start to see things popping out where, when you yourself are viewing your own world, you don't see that as easily. And so having somebody stand back and say, well, how often does that sort of thing happen? And then that question, I've had that question come up a lot in working with clients. How often has that happened? And they kind of have this like, oh, I guess that happens a lot, or I have trouble with that more than I thought I did, Mm-hmm. So I'm looking for those kinds of things, and I'm paying a really close attention to those little indicators. And like you said, you meet one person with ADHD, you've met one person with ADHD. It shows up so differently in every one of us. And mm-hmm. So the power, I think, of an ADHD coach is you can really pay close attention to those things that I hear a lot with my clients go, I had no idea that was part of my ADHD. Mm-hmm. And I see that be a really big relief in a lot of cases. And that's really great to be part of, to mm-hmm. have them say, oh, that's why I do that. It's not because I'm stupid. It's not because I can't keep up. It's not because any of these things. It's just because that's how my brain is wired. Mm-hmm. And I think for seniors, I think one of the bigger challenges that I see with my retirement coaching ADHD clients is that lack of structure that is forced mm-hmm. upon us in whatever work situation we're in. And then suddenly we're cut loose the next day, all of that is gone. In a lot of cases, our social infrastructure was all at work. Mm-hmm. You really think about how much of our lives and for how long, these decades that we're working until we hit retirement age, so much of your world is structured by work. Mm-hmm. And so much revolves around work, your vacations. Just everything in life revolves around that schedule that in many cases is forced upon us, whether we like it or not. And that becomes a real challenge when people are now all of a sudden have a day wide open, a week wide open. What am I going to do for the rest of the next year? And then, and so on. So that becomes a big thing.
I've struggled, and I actually just saw a meme today, because, when your interest is ADHD, it seems like everything in your newsfeed is ADHD. And it was two side-by-side comparisons. It was the executive, ADHD person who, can go from thing to thing to thing and gets it all done. And then the next meme is he's got nothing to do and he's completely overwhelmed, because it's like, how and because we're so used to that going at that high level that we don't. So I can't even imagine having an entire day or a month where I don't have, and, I heard that was the reason that a lot of people were diagnosed during COVID, because all of a sudden those structures were taken away.
Yeah, absolutely. I've seen the same thing. It's amazing what those structures that are put in place. I see it in the kids I work with that are going from into middle school, or they're going into high school, or they're going into college, when they're transitioning from that strong structure, whatever it was they had for so long, particularly from high school into college. And the same thing, I mean, they're different concerns, and there's a whole host of different life challenges that happen for a senior who's retiring versus a senior in high school going into college. But at its core, in a lot of ways, it's very similar, because they have a structure forced upon them from whatever outside influence that is. Mm-hmm. And now they have a completely different world where they either, in the case of a high school senior going into college, has completely different demands on them. And I see this with parents a lot, where they come to me and with their kids, I'm concerned that I'm their executive function. I hear that a lot. I'm the one who's providing this check. Mm-hmm. I'm the one who's checking to make sure their homework's on time and all those things. And we adapt that as we're working. We usually have a boss who's very invested in making sure we get things done on time. Mm-hmm. And then suddenly you get your sheet cake and you retire, and now no one's checking in on you. And, you may or may not have your social infrastructure that's tied to work, or that are still working, especially for those who have been fortunate enough to retire a little bit earlier than most of their social group. They're suddenly the first ones to go through it, and they have to kind of just figure this out on their own. And that's just not something we've been conditioned to do.
Mm-mm. No, absolutely. So tell me a little bit about executive functioning as it might relate to an older adult, and, kind of what that looks like when you struggle with executive functioning.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm a big fan. So if you Google, executive function, or you ask AI, you'll see dozens and dozens and dozens of different explanations for what executive function is. I particularly like the Dawson and Guare series, Smart But Scattered. So I use that one as a guide, and they list 12 executive skills. And the long and short of it is, you have the front part of your brain that is where the evolved, developed part of your brain. It's where your critical thinking, it's where language sits. It's where all of those higher functions, versus the back part of your brain, which is where you see your emotions are tied to that. It's where your fight or flight, all of that biologic, that what people call like the lizard brain or the caveman brain, whatever you want to call it, that part develops first, and then your critical thinking comes along. And our brains don't fully develop until we're at least 25 or so. Mm-hmm. And all of that critical thinking is the last part to develop. And what we see with ADHDers in particular, we see it can be up to a 30% developmental delay in those critical thinking, executive function skill sets. And like I said, Dawson and Guare, they have 12 that they list out. And don't quiz me on them, because I don't think I can list all 12 of them. This is something I always tell my clients too. I don't need to know all the things memorized, as long as I know where to find it, or I have my cheat sheets and templates and everything everywhere. But the way I tend to work with my clients is we go through and we look at the ones and we rank them, which ones are the strongest to the ones that they struggle with the most. And when you find a person who's retiring, moving into that less structured aspect of their life, that's where things like organization, prioritizing, and planning can be, if those executive skills are something that they struggle with, you'll see those show up more, because that's the structure that is no longer there. I don't have a team meeting at 10 o'clock on Mondays, or I, don't have to have this due by 5 o'clock on Friday, or, whatever it is that they've been conditioned. And when you are conditioned, those neural pathways in your brain are kind of like the superhighway. They've been so paved, and you've used them for so many years that it's like flying right down, versus now you're in a world where you have to carve these neural pathways out from the jungle, so you start off with the deer trail, and then it starts to be a little bit more traveled. And eventually you get to a point where you now have that hopefully paved road that you're traveling. But those skills are challenged oftentimes when someone is already struggling with those skills. They can be something becomes even exacerbated in, say, a retirement stage of life, because they just don't have somebody standing over their shoulder telling them they have to do this at time. I mean, you can even see this to the level of, oh, I don't have to shower today. There's a certain freedom in that. And then it can get to a point where we don't want to have that last for too long,
Mm-hmm.
because that becomes unpleasant to be around, obviously. But it can be all of those things. And if you have folks who, working memory can be a challenge. This is one of mine that I struggle with the most is working memory. That one may show up less in retirement simply because it's not something that is as needed, or there's not a whole lot that structure can do for
Mm-hmm.
that. So at least not the way the work world is structured. There's a lot that I work with my clients on that, and all of the coping strategies that I put into place just for myself to deal with those working memory challenges. So it kind of depends. My answer really is, it depends on which of those executive challenges are
Mm-hmm.
bigger for you, or any person when they get into retirement. And so that is one of the first things that I do with my clients, is figure out where those bigger challenges are,
Mm-hmm.
and we start putting those in place,
Mm-hmm.
depending on what the goals are that each client brings to the table.
I'm, first of all, really glad that you brought up your own challenges, because I think that that's one of the things that I like to highlight. It's like, I own a home organizing company, and we also do, move management, specializing in older adults. But that doesn't mean that my house is meticulous and everything is in its place, or that I am perfect. So it's an awareness, but that doesn't mean the problem is solved. It's I've got to be continuously working on, but knowing, hey, you're going to leave your wash in the washing machine if you don't put a visual cue, to move it to the dryer. So, now I know to give myself the visual cue. Otherwise, out of sight, out of mind, I've moved on to the next thing.
Absolutely. We have it's funny you bring up washer dryer. Like, ours are now sending us text messages to say, hey, your dryer is done, or your
Oh,
laundry is done. It's like, oh, that's amazing. It's so helpful. Yeah.
wow. Talk
Yeah.
about universal design for the brain. That's one of the things that I've been saying is, we have universal design for people that are, impaired with their walking or breathing or whatever. But I would like to see some scaffolding built into our society for those of us who struggle with working memory or dyslexia, or, a bill paying on time, and all of the,
Oh, yeah.
I saw the eyes go up. Yeah. It's like, I have these brilliant people who started businesses, but they're like, but I haven't paid my bills for 3 months, and actually, true confession, I'm cleaning up my desk, because I tend to like to work at my dining room. It's my favorite room. I have a beautiful desk, but so my desk is just a compository of stuff that I've just not wanted to deal with. So just today, and I'm an ADHD coach, I've written a book, I find a please open immediately folder, so with my business. So
Yep.
there you are, true confession.
Absolutely. I mean, it's so true. I mean, in the working professionals that I work with, I see it all the time. And there's the sad part, that is, there's so much shame that comes with that. And that's one
Yes.
of the things that just, really, really motivates me in working with my clients, is there's no shame in the fact that that is just simply how your brain is wired.
Mm-hmm.
The creativity and all of the amazing things that created your ability to do whatever it is that you're amazing at in your
Mm-hmm.
workplace, your CEO or your creative director, or whatever it is that you're doing, that you're just rocking out all day. And then they'll have this shame that comes from, well, I can never get my laundry done, or, I have to wash my clothes 7 times before I finally remember to put them in the dryer, or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
down to, what seem like what the outside neurotypical world would call very simple things, and just part of how you have to function as an adult, the adulting. There's no shame in the fact that that's just how your brain is wired, because
Mm-hmm.
if your brain weren't wired that way, you wouldn't also have all of those amazing gifts that are enabling you to do groundbreaking things, or whatever it is you do on a given day. They
Mm-hmm.
have to balance out, I guess, is kind of the way I try to think about it. Is, otherwise, not everybody can, as the kids these days say in their video games, you can't be so powered up that you have no challenges whatsoever. So I work a lot with my clients on that, because there's so much shame that comes with that, what are basic things,
Mm-hmm.
and goes back to those negative messages and the negative reinforcement that we get, and some of it is so subtle,
Mm-hmm.
and it's really
So,
damaging.
So I don't remember exactly the expression, but there was some meme all over, and it was sort of like, we have that weirdness in our family or something, but we don't hide it away. We put it on the front porch and celebrate it. And I have to say, so I'm building a membership community called the Sparkler Society, and I've been like capturing my ADHD in real life and putting it on social media. Like just yesterday, we were having Hanukkah, and my ex-husband was bringing his girlfriend over to my house, which is, unconventional, but we're a modern family. And so I have a dead plant that has literally been sitting on my patio for months. I mean, before Halloween, I know, right? I'm like, oh, it goes with the Halloween.
There you
and
go.
I'm like, I cannot have his girlfriend show up in my house. And so I literally, show it on the film and go to, by the way, this is such an ADHD thing. I don't like pick up the pot, which would have been the easiest thing to do, because in my mind, that's too many steps, and then take it over to the compost. I pick the dead plant up,
out.
Right? And then what do you think happens when I pick the dead plant up?
Oh, mess everywhere.
Everywhere. And now, and actually, I just heard the best saying in my last podcast interview. And he said his aunt had this growing up. It says, "The hurrier I go, the behinder I get." I love it.
Yes, okay, that's awesome.
So we're in such a natural place for me to ask you the button question. Okay. So are you familiar with the button question?
I'm a listener of your podcast. Yes.
Oh, I love it. That's great. That's great. Okay. So when we come back, Jennifer Lorenz is going to answer whether she would push the button and not have ADHD. And before we go to break, I just want to invite all of you who are listening to this podcast to please like it and share it so that I can continue to get the word out, because there's so many people talking about ADHD, but we are not talking about it enough in aging. And the combination of aging with ADHD, as Jennifer said, is more challenging, and we should not be left out of the conversation. Aging is something we should celebrate. That's a whole other conversation. So please do like it and share it. And as I shared, I am building the Sparkler community, the Sparkler Society. And I wanted to call it that because the sparkle eyes, when someone with ADHD has to do a task and they don't want to do it anymore, when we can sparkleize it, that was something I learned about in ADHD coaching, then we give it a new fresh blood. But also, coincidentally, my tagline for my business is, my company is called Silver Linings Transitions, and we do move management. So I will bring in a magic wand and I say, making moves magical. So I have a lot of pictures of me with the wand. So it just was like the perfect thing to call it. But it's really all about accepting who we are, building a community together, letting go of the shame, saying, hey, I've got a bunch of subscriptions I need to cancel. Let's get on and do this together. Or let's put dates on our calendar so we remember to send cards to people, and stop the shame around it and just really start embracing who we are. So, all right. So we're going to pause, and then I'm going to actually let our guest do some talking, because I like to talk. I admit it. I'm one of the oversharers with ADHD. Okay. We're going to take a pause. I used to dread visiting my mother. Because of the clutter, the piles, the chaos, we all experience clutter differently. For me, it was a source of anxiety and stress. I'd try to help and she'd get defensive. We were both frustrated, and it was destroying our relationship. Then we discovered something that changed everything. My mother had ADHD, and she'd been living with it undiagnosed for over 76 years. Suddenly, it all made sense. The clutter wasn't laziness. The disorganization wasn't a choice. Her brain was wired differently, and no amount of willpower or traditional organizing advice was ever going to work. That discovery became my life's work. It's why I started the Grandma Has ADHD podcast. It's why I became an ADHD coach and specialist. And it's why I am so passionate about helping women like my mother and maybe like you. Because here's what I know. Clutter affects us emotionally and physically. It damages relationships. It creates shame spirals. And the overwhelm of not knowing where to start keeps you frozen. But it's okay to ask for help. In fact, it's brave. If you're in the San Diego or Coachella Valley area, my team at Silver Linings Transitions can come to your home. We'll help you tackle the clutter with compassion, not judgment. I also work with women virtually through one-on-one ADHD coaching. And if you are overwhelmed with clutter, I can connect you with trusted resources in your area. Visit jamishapiro.me to get started or grab my book, This Explains So Much, on Amazon. My mother and I got our relationship back. You can get your peace back too. That's JAMISHAPIRO.me. Moving can feel overwhelming, whether you're downsizing, relocating, or helping a loved one transition. There are so many decisions to make, details to handle, and emotions to navigate. At Silver Linings Transitions, we believe every move should be magical, not stressful. We're more than movers. We expertly guide you through the entire process and do our best to alleviate your concerns. From the moment we meet, you'll feel comfortable because we will listen to your needs and wants and work together to create a personalized plan that honors your memories and your cherished belongings while helping you embrace your next chapter. We visit your new space and create a detailed floor plan, ensuring your furniture and treasured belongings will fit safely. We handle the logistics so you don't need to worry about anything, from sorting and packing to coordinating the sale and donation of unwanted items. Our professional team uses efficient, eco-friendly bins and handles every detail with care. We coordinate with our vetted moving partners, oversee the logistics, and ensure nothing is left behind, even packing your refrigerator items. Here's where the magic happens. We don't just unpack, we recreate the feeling of home. Using photos from your previous space, we thoughtfully arrange your furniture, hang your pictures, and set up your kitchen and bathroom so everything feels familiar from day one. When you walk into your new space, it's not just moved in, it's home. Your coffee pot is ready, your favorite photos are perfectly placed, your bed is made, and your new chapter begins with comfort and joy instead of chaos. This is how Silver Linings Transitions makes moves magical. We handle the emotional lifting and the logistics so you can focus on what matters most, settling into your new home. Because every move deserves a silver lining. Hi, I'm Jami Shapiro. I am an ADHD coach and the founder of Silver Linings Transitions, where we do home organizing and move management. And, you know, I did not know that I had ADHD for years. And I remember personally hiring an organizing company to come in and help me because I could just never get it together. And it really wasn't until I understood ADHD and its impact that I realized why. And so I wrote a book, This Explains So Much, Understanding Undiagnosed ADHD, because I just feel like there's so many answers that people don't even know that they're looking for, especially generations of women who grew up thinking that ADHD was just for the hyperactive little boy. It turns out it's not only a body that can be hyperactive, but it can be a mind that's hyperactive. So you can have a wonderful day and you can have something wonderful happen, and then that one negative thing that happens is going to be the thing that takes you into that spiral, and it's going to be keeping you up at night, and you're going to be ruminating on it. And I think that, you know, we as women carry so much shame and so much how it's supposed to be. I'm supposed to have it together. And I remember that was the case for me. I remember, how is it that all of these women have so much consistency and their kids get the sticker charts and everything seems to run well, and I'm the one that's missing parent-teacher conferences and my house, you know, is always in chaos. And then again, that negative self-talk. So my mission is really to educate people who have no idea that ADHD has the impact that it does. And it's to connect you to other people who get it and who will make you feel that you aren't alone, you're not crazy, you're not lazy, you're not stupid, you're not too much. You just have a brain that was wired differently. And I can't wait for you to join me in the community that I'm building, the workshops that I'm creating, the book club that I'm hosting, because I know that I am going to make a profound difference in your life. So we are back with Jennifer Lorenz, and I have to tell you that in the break, of course, we were both talking about how we both think that we were dominating the conversation because that's such an ADHD thing. And I'm like, no, it was me. I definitely dominated. So I'm going to try, Jennifer, to let you do more of the talking. And you know what? I'm going to let you ask me a question too, because I never do that. So,
okay, I have to think about that. I have to give me a minute to think.
Okay. So now you're on the hook for the button question. If you could press the button and not have ADHD, would you press the button?
No, I would not. I've thought about this quite a bit. Like I said, I'm a regular listener to your podcast. I think it's such a fabulous question. I can say that now when I'm calm and everything is going okay. If you catch me on a day where I've forgotten this or forgotten that, or the third time I'm going in the house because I've forgotten my phone and I forgot my keys and I forgot whatever, usually my big one is working memory. That's the one I have the worst challenge with. I would, in the moment, I might be tempted because it does. I don't want to sugarcoat things and have it seem like, I hear a lot of people say it's a superpower. And I think however any individual categorizes it or categorizes is the wrong word, but absorbs it. What's the word I'm looking for? But however any person deals with their challenges, their ADHD, I say go for it. The more positive it can be. So if that phrasing works for people, then fabulous, use it. I know there are definitely lots of people who feel like that undermines the challenges that come with ADHD. Call it
toxic positivity.
Yeah, and I totally understand that too. So I tend not to use that phrasing, and I think there's so many positive things that can come from ADHD, and you're just wired that way. So it's like saying, well, there are definitely days that I wish my eyes were blue or green, and that doesn't mean I'm gonna ever be able to do anything about it, aside from, I guess I can get colored contacts, what have you, but it's just the way that we're born. Right. And there are I see this, I think with my kids in particular, I look at them and it's like, they are just cool, amazing humans. I am so lucky to be their mom and to see them grow. And, I guess that's part of having an ADHD coach as a mom. We have normalized it in our house from the time my oldest received his diagnosis. It's been like, hey, this is what comes with it. And it's not about you're bad at this or any of those things. Those were definitely messages that I got. You're bad at math. You can't math. For example, I have a thing with math, obviously.
Oh, I have the same thing.
So I think it's how we phrase those things and accepting, which is so hard, accepting that there are just some things I struggle with. And I can work really, really hard on them. And that's where I sort of that Clifton Strengths comes in for me. Is the foundation of Clifton Strengths is the data shows us over research that you can work twice as hard, 3 times as hard, 5 times as hard to improve those things that you're not naturally gifted at. And your return on investment, so to speak, will be minimal. You'll gain some increased skill. Whereas if you take even half of that same investment and effort and put it at the things that you're good at, you will get exponentially greater results. And I just think that's the best way to look at having it. There are days where, man, it's really kind of kicking my butt. And that's the way that day is just going to go. And having the grace to say, and then there are days where I'm really killing it. And that's also due to my ADHD. It's just as much a part of me as, it's as every cell as anything else. So there are definitely days and challenges that I would certainly trade. But overall, I wouldn't be where I am without it. I wouldn't have had the gift to be able to work with the clients that I do without knowing how they struggle and what they struggle with every day. And I wouldn't trade that.
So I have a question. I love your answer. I mean, I love your answer. I'm going to ask you the question, but I also want to share something because I'll forget it. I wanted to ask you if your kids are open to your coaching, because mine are not. Oh, I love the laugh. It's like, oh, mom, right?
We
So,
cannot coach our own kids.
correct.
It is so
By
frustrating.
the way, we also cannot help our parents downsize and declutter.
Mhm.
That also does not work well. That's a whole other subject matter. But I was going to share with you that I, wrote my book, got it out in October. I had like back-to-back speaking opportunities, so I was like going on. And then I was supposed to have like a book celebrating that my book had come out, and I was going to have a bunch of people over. And I'm like, I do not have it in me. I am
Mhm.
just absolutely spent. And I wouldn't, in normal times prior to all that I knew about my ADHD, I would have continued with the party, pushed through it, and now I'm honoring my energy and I'm giving myself the pause, which never would have happened.
Mhm.
So I do want to share that because I think that's really significant, is that we do have these bursts of energy, and then we have I got to retract. By the way, to what you just talked about, your energy level and how you can be really, really good at some things, and that's where you should expend your energy. I learned about a book actually at the ADHD conference that I actually finished. And I don't, if you're not someone that loves reading a book, for me to have finished a book is significant. It was called Buy Back Your Time
Mhm.
by Dan Martell. And he actually, so it's funny, Steve, you start reading the book and you can tell from the first story, this guy's got ADHD. And of course he did. And it's really about putting like looking at what your time is worth, and that's obviously if you're in a career and you're being paid, and then looking at all of the things that you have to do that someone else could do but if you love it, you should still do it. You still need those things. You still need to build in the extras and that balance that we talked about. But if you don't like it and you're spending your energy on it, what else could you be doing with your time? And so sometimes pay someone else to clean your house or to organize. I actually pay my team to come in and organize my house.
I think
Um,
it's amazing. Yeah, absolutely. I need to read that. That is, I use that same argument with myself in our home all the time. And
mhm,
I think about it, like if the if I need a plumber, like I'm going to call a plumber because they know what they're doing. They'll do
mhm,
it faster, better, and far more neatly than I
mhm.
would ever do on my own. I don't ask them to come in and, it would not be a good choice for them to come in and coach my clients. Why would I expect myself to be able to fix my sink? And again,
Mhm.
that goes back to that whole shame language and all of it. I am so happy you brought that up because it is so important. I love the idea of buying back your time. I think about that all the time. Do
Well,
I hate cleaning my house. I admit I have a cleaning service that comes in every couple of weeks, and it's far worth it. And it's
mhm.
not just the time that you spend doing whatever that activity is. It's the time you have to spend thinking about it, hating that you're going to have to do it, gearing yourself up to do it, getting through all of the comments to yourself of, oh, if I could just do this, and all of the things that we say to ourselves,
And
because
it
that's what
provides
we've
your
been
energy.
conditioned. Exactly. All of that counts too.
Mhm. Right. Good. Well, I'm glad. It's a great book. Okay. So, what have I not asked you? Again, keeping in mind that I'm really gearing this conversation to women 50 and over. By the way, you are allowed to listen if you're a man, if you're not a grandma, if you are under 50, you're still welcome here. I do not discriminate based on age, sex, religion, gender, any of that stuff. We tend to be, as ADHDers, we tend to be really open to other people and embracing everything. But anyway, I've never said that before, by the way. I like
I
that
think
one.
I love that. I'm so glad. I think you're spot on. I mean, when you think about that button question, right? Would I change that? I think that's one of the things that I love most that I have learned through having ADHD and working with the clients that I do is really being able to just see the brilliance and the amazing things that every human is capable of. And how would that change if they were wired differently? it's
Mhm.
just it's just that unique thing that makes every single individual, as you say, sparkle.
Mhm. Yeah, I love it. Thank you for bringing that back. Okay. So first of all, who do you work with and who should reach out to you?
I work mostly with adults, whether they have ADHD or they don't. That's the idea is that the skills that I have as a coach are transferable, whether they have ADHD or they don't, whether they're diagnosed or they're not. I don't require paperwork that says that someone's been diagnosed or anything. It's just anybody who thinks that I can be of assistance to them. And, if they connect with me, whether it's through the website or whatever it is, however they come across me, I think it's such a gift and such an honor to be given someone's trust. And so if I have someone reach out, whether they're a 17-year-old or they're a 75-year-old or anywhere in between, and they say, I heard you talk about this, or I think, you get it, or whatever it is that causes them to reach out, because that in and of itself can be such a huge hurdle, reaching out for that help, whatever that might look like for any individual. That is just an honor to me. So I embrace clients from all walks of life, from all aspects, and diagnosed or not. I just think it's such a gift to be able to have the ability and the training to be able to help them. It's what I would want from someone. And so I just try to use that sort of golden rule. So I work with mostly adults. I do work with families on occasion. I like to work with them as a system. So if I'm working with kids, I think I get the best results. I see the best results when I work with the kids and their parents. And so from all walks of life and from all aspects of life, anyone who's struggling with organization, with priorities, with planning, with productivity, with, I just can't seem to remember things and I can't put the structure in place to get there, those kinds of things. And just across the board, those executive function challenges. So just because if you have executive function challenges doesn't mean you have ADHD, but they're so closely related that most ADHDers find that they have certain executive function skill challenges. So that's why I got that extra special training in the EF challenges side of things, because I can tell pretty quickly where we need to narrow down and what structures and strategies and scaffolding we need to put in place. So that people aren't, for me, I like to use working memory because it's such a challenge. Me too. You should see the Post-its I have everywhere, right? And books for my Post-its and all of the different things that I do. But that's just what I need to be able to function in the world that I am with I'm a working mom of 2 boys. There's a lot going on in our house. That's what I need to function. And I don't need to feel guilty or shame about that. And that's what I want to bring with my clients.
Sure. So how can people find you?
So I try to make it really easy. So one last thing to remember. So it's JenniferLorenzCoaching.com. That's my website. You can book directly through there. And everything is right on my website. So you can reach me via email there. There's a contact form that you can reach out. And I try to put a lot of information on my website about the different things that areas of that people can reach out about, some examples, because sometimes they'll hear like, okay, well, I think I could use some help, but I'm not really sure how or in what, or how should I reach out? All of that is on my website. So that's the easiest way to get me, JenniferLorenzCoaching.com.
Nice. And that's LORENZ for those of you who are listening, and Jennifer with the 2 N's.
That's right.
Also, I will go into Trader Joe's, by the way, and when I see funky names or spelling names, I'll be like, you have a parent with ADHD.
So true.
Mine is JAMI. That was a red flag.
I love it. I think it's great. I love that the spelling that you have. I think it's great.
I like it now too. I hated it when we grew up and, you couldn't find your name on anything and, they'd call me Jami, but again, there's my squirrel moment. Okay. So what did I not ask you, or what do you want to share that, because, I'm sure you do this when you have a conversation and then you get off and then you're like ruminating over, I should have said this, and maybe I'm catching on the spot, but.
No, not at all. I mean, I think the message that I hope people who are listening to your podcast, or if they recommend it to others, first of all, I just think it's amazing what you're doing. I mean, that's why I wanted to be, this is the very first podcast I've ever done. So why I wanted to be with you first is I really love the way that you are going about putting the energy behind destigmatizing. I think that's so critically important. And I just hope that those who hear this podcast, whether it's something they are personally dealing with or someone in their life is dealing with, what have you, just to know that they're not broken. They're not less than. They're not stupid. They're not all of the messages they most likely have gotten at some point or another through their lives. It just means that your talents don't wrap up as neatly and as structured as the way the world has been built. It's like I'm a night owl, as many of us ADHDers are. That doesn't mean I can't get up in the morning because I don't like to. It means that it's not my preference. My energy is not best at that hour, and I can still do it. And to ask myself to suddenly become an early bird, what is for why? What does that do for me? And it's pick your thing. It's the same whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, whatever it is. It goes back to that strengths function, right? Everybody has their unique challenges and their unique gifts, and we all need help figuring out how to manage our challenges in this really overscheduled, overbooked, overstimulated world. Mm-hmm. And I just really hope that we can start breaking down that shame.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That is definitely the biggest underlying current in all of my podcast interviews. And that is absolutely that negative messaging, because we all heard so much of it growing up, and then we internalize it. And then that's the voice in our head. And yeah, I mean, I say it in almost every episode, but I think it's like the first thing I say in my book, which is like, this is the first and, easy in that everybody can do it. It's just,
right.
It's just committing to doing it and being aware of it. So, okay. So any other final, by the way, did you think of a question? Because I put it out there. I don't want to circle back to it.
Oh man, I get so distracted, right? so typically distracted.
I'm proud of myself for circling back, because,
well done. I mean,
for me.
I would be really curious. Like, I'm really curious what prompted you to go from obviously having the passion for destigmatizing to launching the podcast. What got you to go? Because that's not an easy step to overcome. So I'm really curious about that part.
Oh, well, I thank you for asking me that question. I think I'm gonna have to start doing this, because I haven't in my podcast. So literally, I am a certified senior move manager. I am a member of NASM, the National Association of Senior Move Managers, and we have our slow time of year. And so one of my colleagues said, hey, you really need to invest more in the organizing, which is so funny, because as I shared, I am not an organizer, but I did earn my professional organizer designation because I can speak to it. Mm-hmm. So while I was studying to become an organizer, I learned about the ICD, which is the Institute for Challenging Disorganization. And I knew, by the way, so here's the backstory. I knew that I had ADHD. I found out after I had started my business, but I was at the time 45 years old. I've got 3 younger kids, 13, 11, and 6. I'm going through a divorce. So, okay, I'm 45 with ADHD. I graduated college with high honors. I started a business. It was I have ADHD, and they just put it away. And then when I became the level 2 specialist in ADHD and I started to really learn about it, then I was like, oh, wait, there's something here. And then when I heard a podcast talking about fibromyalgia and migraine headaches, and a lot of people with ADHD, I was like, spidey sense went up, because my mom has struggled with those her whole life. And no cause, nothing can be found. And P.S., I used to tell people when I would go into their homes and they were really cluttered, oh, don't even worry about it. My mom has hoarding disorder. I've seen this before. And then I'm like, wait a minute. And so literally, like the day that I called my mom to say, hey, Mom, I don't think you have a hoarding disorder. I think you have ADHD. The name came to me. It was like, Grandma Has ADHD. Like it was divine. I mean, I'm very woo-woo, but it was like this, I got to get this message out. And I will say too, I'm very blessed that I love public speaking. I get energized from it. In fact, when I was in 6th grade, I was asked to deliver the speech to all the parents at the open house. So something I've always liked. So it was and I've always wanted to do a podcast. In fact, I had tried a couple different ones before, but it's interest-based with ADHD. And so nothing was interesting enough to get me to be consistent. And then when I realized that this was something that I wanted to get out, I actually reached out to Dr. Kathleen Nadeau, who has, at the time, had written the only book I could find on aging and ADHD. Mm-hmm. And I reached out to her and said, I'm starting this podcast. Will you be a guest? And she said yes. So, and then people are just saying yes. But like I said, I have been working with seniors for 12 years. And and I was already on the soapbox about let's stop calling it anti-aging. So then when the ADHD thing came about, and it just was, so that was a very, very, very long answer, but
not at all. There's a journey, right? Everybody has that journey, and that's the great thing. It's amazing how one day something is just like, this is what I need to be doing.
But I will say, and this is a really important part, the technology, I actually recorded 10 episodes in May of 2024, but I had a problem with the technology and I kept having issue after issue come out. So I didn't release until October. And then I just made the decision that I was not going to do life on hard mode, that I was not going to make this too complicated. I was not going to have all the edits and, all of that taken care of, that I was just going to keep it is very real and eliminate as many things that would cause a deterrent for me. And I'm very, very much, you've been listening to my podcast, perfect is the enemy of done. I've been saying that way before I even knew I had ADHD, but perfection can keep us, as from going out into the world and giving all that we can to it. And I do believe we're all here for a purpose. We are all given the skills and the tools that we need to fulfill that purpose. And I would not press the button either, by the way.
Oh yeah, I totally get that. Yeah, I think that's such a great message. I think it's great what you're doing, and I'm just really excited to be part of it. So thank you for the opportunity.
Well, I'm honored that this was your first podcast. You nailed it. You need to do more podcasts. You got it. It. Again, perfect is the enemy of done. Just go out into the world and share your message, because it was a great conversation.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So anything else you want to say to our guests who are, discovering their ADHD or their likely ADHD later in life?
It's normal. It's normal for a lot of us. It just wasn't something that was available to us when we were younger. Thankfully, the conversations for all the people doing exactly what you're doing and destigmatizing it is creating the ability for our kids to get the help that they need so much younger and so much earlier. That makes all of the difference. And for those of us who didn't know or weren't diagnosed or, whatever, that hyperactive, stereotype, for a lot of us who are inattentive, that hyperactivity is cognitive. So it's our brain just constant. My mom used to say to me all the time, she's like, your brain just never shuts off. And I was like, well, is it supposed to? It just seemed odd to me. Like, well, of course it doesn't. But that turns out that's not how everybody is.
Yeah, I can't imagine the quiet.
Yeah, I think it would freak me out if it suddenly went quiet. I would have to wonder.
Right. Well, this has been an amazing interview. We went longer, so you should know that. I'm usually trying to cut it off, but I enjoyed the conversation so much. I'm like, if they want to turn it off, they can turn it off. But I'm really having fun.
Likewise.
So thank you so much, Jennifer Lorenz. You've done quite a bit. I didn't know about Gallup strengths. I know about VIA character strengths, which we learned about in ADCA training. But I'm going to stop because I keep going. But thank you so much for listening. And if you are listening to this podcast or you've heard this before, then you know that I like to end with, make the rest of your life the best of your life. There is no point in our lives when we shouldn't know ourselves better and, do everything we can to understand ourselves and make our lives easier. So thank you so much for listening. The opinions expressed on Grandma Has ADHD podcast are those of our guests and hosts and are intended for informational and entertainment purposes only. This podcast does not provide medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. The content discussed in this episode is not a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician, mental health professional, or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition or mental health concern. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you have heard on this podcast. If you think you may have a medical emergency, call your doctor or emergency services immediately. The hosts, guests, and producers of Grandma Has ADHD do not assume any liability for the content of this podcast. Listen at your own discretion.